Are you getting the message?
Yeah, just going through.
Yeah. Okay. That's fantastic. Meeting is now streaming live on YouTube. Welcome everyone. We have got some subscribers and they get alert when we go live and they are likely to watch us as well. So we are live. And I'm going to admit people. David is here as well. Fantastic. There is someone called Hello. Very nice.
Hello and welcome. Hi, Tara.
Wait, hello. Sorry.
Hello.
Hi, Dog.
Hi, I just wanted to validate because I was planned to talk today and now I'm not written. So just to know if it's if I'm part of the plan or not.
Yes, you are quite right. And I have lost the contact detail and I didn't hear from you as well. So you were on the plan to talk today, but it was completely lost. So we didn't know what's happening. So we had to quickly arrange some lightning talks. Yeah, okay. maybe for the new year, next year we can reorganize. Fantastic.
No problem.
So yeah, tell me when, and we need to have the confirmation other than first agreeing that this is the date and also a few days before.
No worries. So let's take it offline, okay?
Yes, fantastic. Okay, we are live and we have some live watchers on YouTube, so they are our attendees too. They may not interact. I'm going to watch that our live channel as well. If anyone is asking question, then I can bring it back here. We will have some people joining here. There are 30 people who have RSVP'd, so potentially they will join as well. So fantastic. Let's go ahead and with the Terence, do you want to first do the intro of our regular agenda, yeah, and then go ahead with your book review, right?
Of course, yeah.
Yeah, fantastic.
Share. Okay. So, welcome everyone. My name is Terence Darling. I'm joined by Prem. Hi, Prem. This is where I always say I should say hi. Okay, and today we've got one book a month coming up, which is the 5 Dysfunctions of a Team, a manga edition, covered by myself. Intercultural Empathy Map by Patricia. Agile Poem by Farah. Agility and Personal Development by David. And Agile Stand Up, What Is It Really by Conrad. Then we'll go through what is next and a wrap up. I have got some slides to show after each person's done their presentation, just so that you can give our speakers some feedback, which I'm sure they'll appreciate. So we'll move on to the 1 book a month. And Prem, this is where you normally do the questioning. Disappeared on me. She disappeared. Okay, I'll go with it. So the book I'm reviewing is The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team. So some of you may be familiar with this, by Patrick Lencioni, I believe is the pronunciation of his last name. I may have just got that totally wrong, so forgive me. But this edition's different, and it's very, very different, as you can see. So it is done in the form of a graphic novel. So the original came out in 2002. This version came out in 2008. So what I liked about this, obviously, graphic novel style, it really appealed to me. It was refreshing to read through something which just wasn't wall after wall of text, page after page. I mean, I've got a huge, like many, I know many people have got this. I've got a huge backlog of books to read through, agile books, and the thought of reading through more and more pages just turns me off. But this was great. It's only about 180 pages long. What I found was I was able to pick it up, read a couple of pages, put it back down, just like a normal comic sort of thing, rather than having to read page after page after page. It essentially goes through a fable, a little bit like Phoenix Project or Rise, if any of you have read that, where they're going through a model via a story. The drawing style is pretty good, but it changes when there's a particular action or particular conflict, and makes the characters into a mini version of themselves, which I guess is the manga actual style, but it was a little bit off-putting to begin with. What I disliked about it, there's a couple of things. One was character names. So they could have picked any character names they wanted, but we ended up with Jeff Stanley, Jeff Rawlins, Jan, Martin, and Michelle, or Mickey. A few pages in, someone sort of says, "Oh, I've had a telephone call from Jeff," and you're left going, "Which Jeff? Jeff Rawlins or Jeff Stanley?" And it becomes clear eventually, but to say we could have picked any names, to pick two people with the same names was a bit of a, oh, why did you do that? You could have made it easier for your readers. Biggest issue with the book is that the management team in the story readily accept all of the changes that are asked of them. There's no real resistance or pushback. I found that difficult to believe, because obviously people in management get to management by doing things a certain way. And they know that those are proven, tried ways, and then magically someone comes along and says, ditch all that and just do this. And in the book, they all do it. So it was a bit too easy in the story for them. The other thing was the contents page. So the contents page, there are subsections which are not in the contents page, but when you read through the book, you can see them titled. Maybe something which is just in this particular edition. I don't know if it's in the actual original book. And it's done really strange, because part one's only 7 pages long, and then you have the next part which is 90 pages, and there's a real variation there, and it feels like they just wanted to fit everything on one page rather than have contents page go on to 2, which seems a bit strange. Yeah, one last thing was a character's brought in at the end, and they don't really add anything to the story. There's no real purpose apart from them to sort of say how amazing the team is and how great it is to work in such an open mind with such open-minded people. So I would say the biggest complaint, and I've seen this online as well about the original book, even though it's told in a fable, the last 40 pages are really where the value of the book lies. It's talking about a model, and it's revealed in the last part of the book, really. It's mentioned throughout the story. They're building the pyramid of trust, or the pyramid of the 5 dysfunctions. Those 5 dysfunctions are absence of trust, fear of conflict, lack of commitment, avoidance of accountability, and inattention to results. It could have been really 40 pages, which is, it's don't get me wrong, it's nice to read. All of the solutions seem to come really easy for the management team. It just, after reading it just leads you to concentrate more on those 5 dysfunctions that are mentioned in the pyramid, the model. And for me, I started looking at the individual books that can tackle each of those dysfunctions. So there's things like Radical Candor. I think it's Kim Scott who wrote that one, and that's sort of like the fear of conflict, and it's dealt with in there. So there are books out there which go in depth and into more detail and give much better practical advice. I've noticed when I ordered this on Amazon, I noticed there's a second book, which is, I'm not sure if it's called The Workshops or if it's called Overcoming the 5 Dysfunctions of a Team or something like that, which obviously has been produced afterwards. I'm guessing through someone's just said playbook. It's obviously, they've had feedback about, hey, you don't really explain what you did to make these changes. You just say these changes happened. There's a little bit in the part of the book on the model about some things, but it's not really in depth. Overall, it's a pretty good book. I can see why so many people like it. It is very idealistic in the storytelling. I found the Phoenix Project, the Unicorn, and Rise a better story. What I'd really like to see, though, is more books in this sort of different format. I think it's really useful for people who maybe avoid books because they don't want to read loads and loads, or they struggle potentially with remembering all of the characters or things like that. Whereas having it in a comic style, I know a chap I work with, he's got dyslexia, and he said, oh, having something like in a comic is really easy for me because the speech bubbles, it's really sort of specific as to where I'm reading, versus when I've got a wall of text, I can easily get lost. I can misinterpret the words quite easily. He said, but having them broken out is really good. I'm much more of a visual thinker, and that's what this book is really useful for people who have got that sort of style of learning. So, has anyone got any questions? That was a really quick review, I know, compared to everyone else's. Prem, anything?
My thinking was that when you said, I don't know why this was done like this, maybe like this. Now the book is out. Now we are trying to figure out this was done probably to address this or anything like that. So it is kind of retrofitting the market, or is it?
Definitely. One thing, I guess there's a complaint about, one complaint you can throw at many books like this, of this sort, where it's a tale or a story, is that there's little to no factual evidence. So the story's been made up to fit a model, which I'm guessing Patrick's seen work somewhere once, but you don't know where, and there's no empirical evidence to say that this is the right thing.
Sorry, no, the Phoenix book, as well as the Phoenix project, as well as the Unicorn project. Yeah. I think there is at the back, they say where the original story comes from. Yeah. And the author himself was part of that story.
Yeah, Kim Jean, isn't it? Yeah, yeah.
Kim, yeah. So Jean Kim, sorry.
Sorry,
Jean is his first name. Yeah. So he says at the end, probably after the Phoenix project, I think he says that I made out the security guy as the bad guy, but I was actually the security guy in that story.
In that story, yeah.
in that story. Yeah. Okay,
Yeah.
so for some people, yeah, like you said, that there are some visual thinkers that who may find this particular model working for them, and the storytelling model works for certain other group of people who are looking for social proof that these changes can really happen as well.
Yeah.
It is not that the self, the enterprise coaching and the agile coaching books are all talking about theories, and then there are quite a lot of doubts when people ask that can it really happen, and especially when you are working with the leadership, this is the one thing they ask: where is the practical thing you can show me that this really does work?
And that is the issue with this book. There is no practical thing that you can point at and say, yes, it was done at this company or anything like that, because it literally is made up, I believe, to fit the model that he wanted to promote. So it's still good. It still resonates with a lot of things that you will see in corporate culture, about the psychological safety and about having that trust there. I think some of it's a little bit, I think some of it doesn't apply to every culture is one thing. So I wonder realistically how open you could be, let's say in America, as what's seen as one of the senior leaders, and saying, hey, that's not my strongest thing, or I'm really weak in this area and that's where I need help, which is what happens in part of the book. So it's made out that everyone goes, oh, no problem. But I wonder in the cutthroat world of business whether that really is seen.
Yeah. Any other question from anyone else? I got another question. I will ask after others.
Not a question, but maybe an addition, because I used to use his assessment when I started off in bigger teams or programs to make a basic analysis. And it kind of gave me already hints what to work for, because if you have a majority of people, 150 people participating in that assessment and basically answering the questions, it gives you some hints of what might be actually an underlying issue of maybe not providing the results they wish, or not having the possibility to have people actually being engaged in what they are actually supposed to do. So it gave me always a little bit of a hint and an orientation and maybe a basis for discussions, without relying too much of the empirical evidence he didn't provide in his books, because he wrote also a couple of other books, and they are, for me, a guidance, a help, but I can't really say this is the one I take for everything I'm doing.
So Pat, when you mentioned the test, do you mean is it the Myers-Briggs test that they take?
No, there is. He has like 30 questions or something, and one of her, he has even a full catalogue of workshops he's suggesting per level of those 5 steps, how to achieve the top of a pyramid. So I basically went through it and did assessments either with teams or with the management. So I had both parts once done. And I can only tell you it was only good to give me an indication or direction, but not of 100% of this is how it will develop way.
Okay. Is that... So that's not in this book?
No, it's not.
Is it in...
He got this red book, right? And I think there were a couple of indications for questions at the end. But I also think, Tara got it. I got it downstairs as well. I'm not prepared. Yeah.
No. I've got, because it says that there's the 5 temptations of a CEO, 4 obsessions of an extraordinary executive, the 3 big questions for a frantic family, the 3 signs of a miserable job, and the dysfunctions. So it may be in that red book that those things exist. as I mentioned in the back, it talks about doing the sorry, I'm going to get the name wrong, Myers-Briggs test at the very beginning. They put them all through that and sort of say what that indicates about their personality. And it's got some things in here about so it says personality and behavioral preference profiles, but that's, I'll just show, that's just in that little section there. There's nothing actually. It just said, hey, you might want to read this and do that. Team effectiveness exercise, 60 minutes. But they're not really that great. Sorry. So, Farah, you've got a question as well? Oh, you're on mute.
I wasn't first.
Oh, sorry. Tutu then. Sorry.
Good evening, everyone.
Hey.
So I think I came in when the conversation was almost rounding up. But I think I read the book sometimes after a Telford training we did. That's when I got to know about the book, and I picked some things from there, and which I thought really very, very important. And that is sometimes we just want to get everybody to agree, and agreement is not always the best way. Leave a bit of conflict in there, because I'm always like, okay, we have to agree and reach, but then it's made me realize that when sometimes we agree, we're not sometimes being truthful. We're just allowing peace to just rainbow. We may not actually get the best of the teams, right? So yeah, I got a lot of things from there, and the good thing is that I was able to finish it in one day.
Yeah. So yeah, they talk about people doing that because they want to avoid conflict. So,
yeah.
And he's sort of saying that, well, sorry, the character in it, Catherine, who's seen as a new CEO, she wants there to be conflict there. She wants people to say, no, that's a bad idea. Let's not spend the money on that particular thing, or let's make sure that we are supporting the salespeople. And it does come out, but you're right. It was one of the things that came out to me about, I can see these things happening in meetings where people are just like, yeah, whatever, just move on. I'm not going to really, I'm not thinking strategically about what's best for the team. I just want you to get past this so that I can talk about the thing that I want to talk about. Yeah, I think it's common. Yeah, cool. And Farah, thank you.
For me, this book, not the manga version, the book standard version, was a bit of a gateway drug.
Yeah.
I'd never read a business book before. This is a long time ago. This book has been out there a while, and it was far less scary to read than a lot of the kind of textbooky things. So because it is quite easy to get into, although it was a bit scary, she was a CEO and I was just some lowly cog. But apart from that, it did encourage me to read more books with more detail and more challenging material. So I think it's a nice starter because it isn't too deep in a way.
Yeah. I didn't find it overly. It's not overly technical, and it doesn't. It explains things nicely. I'll put it that way. Yeah, it's. You don't have to know about profit and loss sheets. You don't have to know about the daily functions of a CEO and things like that to be able to get in and read it. Yeah, it's all right, but I feel maybe we should release an edition which is this plus the playbook at the end, so it's a complete thing, which then gives you, hey, this is this is the stories. I'd love to see one with case studies in where people have actually taken those workshops, taken this book, used it, and what the case studies then show, because I think that'd be a lot more powerful. That's just my take. Okay. Cool. Has anyone got? Oh, someone's put something in the chat. Oh, Carla. Thank you. Prem, anything from yourself? Oh, you can ask me about the price. Go on.
Did you say how much, where to find those kind of things?
How much? I cannot remember. I think it was. I think it's £15. I might be wrong. It might be 18. It might be 9. I bought my copy off of Amazon. There is a Kindle edition. Judging by what people have said, I would only buy this edition if the format appeals to you. By the sounds of it, the other edition's got more things in it, so more references. Maybe there is a bit at the very front where it says you can go to a website, I think. So maybe there's some items on the website.
Do you know? Sorry, do you know whether the main book and this book, the contents are the same, other than the format, or?
I believe the story's the same, and I think the layout with the model at the end is the same. But by the sounds of it, there is more links and more information. So I don't know if they've obviously had to cut it down to make way for the illustrations on each page. So maybe there's less text there. Maybe that'll be the next one. I'll have to read the original, then do a comparison between the two of them.
You can do.
There are, like I said, there are some key takeaways about those dysfunctions, and you do, as Tutu rightly said, you do see them appearing in meetings, and especially with leadership teams. Hey, I'm just going to brush over that, and you're sometimes sitting there going, am I the only one who's seen that this is a bad idea and talking up, and why is no one else talking up? And it's that, no, we're just gonna pass it, because if I give approval for this, then that person will give approval for mine as well. That's the other thing, that horseplay. So, yeah. Oh, right. I will leave it there unless someone's got another question.
Thank you.
Okay, right.
Thank you.
Let us go.
Right. Before we move on, and we can all say thank you to Terence, because thank you so much for taking time and bringing this book to us.
No problem. Let's see if I can get right PowerPoint. So we are moving on to Pat, who's going to give us a talk on intercultural empathy mapping. And I will.
Can I say she's joining us from Germany, and 1 hour late for her as well. And thank you so much for joining.
The evening hours, right?
Evening hours, yeah.
Because the clock changed. That's the only one pity.
Oh, yeah.
That's the only one. But I'm happy that you have me here. So thanks for that. I am an agile coach who experienced quite a bit of transformations, and one of those where I used actually the survey of the questions from Lencioni as a basis to identify actually what challenges we might actually tackle. I had an intercultural subject in my teams, we're talking here about 450 people in one of those transformations where I'm engaged in. And I figured, because they literally never had to work together, those beautiful people, they kind of crashed and clashed against each other. I mean, there might be different reasons why that happened, but I basically thought, well, before they start really fighting, we might be able to address those things. So I created a workshop. And this workshop is literally helping them to address their biases and prejudices. And there's such a thing like an empathy map. You might know that from product development. And I basically did it, I reversed it in a different way. I made it an own thing for the intercultural subject. But let's just dive in. So I just show you a couple of things what I do with them. So they need an introduction somehow, because without that, they actually will not understand, okay, good that we will hear something about a culture. Yeah, and what will we do with that? Well, you can also read about different cultures online. There's a page which I will show with you as well. So if you have such a thing like 6 different cultures, you're actually not aware of certain attitudes, certain, how do you say, certain common behavioral patterns, then that's one of those things to maybe read up on. What I personally prefer is rather talking about it, because that's where the dialogue actually starts, and that's where understanding can actually be created. So we talk about, okay, what's actually the difference between multicultural, cross-cultural, intercultural? Because I want an intercultural team. I don't want the cultures being separated, everyone for themselves, or in cross-cultural being a comparison. I'm the more dominant culture, therefore you do what I intend to do, so you adapt to me. I rather like to have a basis where everyone is equal and where everyone can express, and we take the best out of all the cultures and create our own. So the main core message actually in my initial little talk is always, we want to create our own. Every culture is good the way how they are. We don't want to change them, except of some mindsets. They're kind of challenging. Maybe they need to be rethought. But in general, we want to create the best out of, our own from the best of everything. And there's also another part of diversity, equity, and inclusion. So I also give them a little bit of a chat of what it actually means to be inclusive, have equity and diversity. And where I want to head towards is that it's nice that you might have one of these individual parts, but the 3 of them create actually belonging. And that's where I want to go with them. So I want to create belonging. And how do we do that? So we need to have this understanding. So while I'm a systemic coach, I love to see the different spheres. I like to change perspectives. And for those, the first part is confronting basically yourself with your own culture. So what I guide them through, and I also have my little magnifier with me when I do those workshops, because it's one of those parts of, you do have different lenses on, and you can change the shade. It's like being in summer, riding on your bicycle, and it's rather, either it's very sunny, you need hardcore shades on, so to protect yourself, or you just have some view issues and you have a rather different lens on it. But it's the same with what we think we know about some culture and what we actually get surprised about. And one of those things is how much we actually in reality have in common. So I do invite my beautiful people in actually rethinking their approaches of how they approach different cultures or people. So one of those things as well, we address it. Confrontation is important, because without you confronting yourself with the different approaches or with your own perception about a different culture, what happens? Nothing. If you only stay in a complaint stage, like, oh, this culture is always this way. I mean, where do you even get this thought of? Okay, you're based on experience, but really just complaining about something feels actually not just like an isolation. You will isolate yourself of the possibilities and opportunities. And there is such a thing like conforming, showing basically the potential of adaptability, from learning from the observations we do, understanding basically the different standpoints and socializations, and also adapt to it. Adapt especially on a team level or an organizational level to it. So there is a need of not just training our managers and leaders in different cultural skills, it's also important to bring that onto the team level, because they are the people who are working on a daily basis. So without the confrontation, they actually don't have it. So I do basically invite them, and also you, when you do those things, invite your colleagues into reflecting on what makes their cultural lenses, what is actually shaping them, where are you coming from, what's making your opinion about certain things. And the first step is, because I do that in 2 stages, and I only show you today 1 stage, that's just an explanation how to do it, but here's actually the more relevant part. So I draw basically for every culture an empathy map, and I call it intercultural empathy map. And as you know, it has different parts of think and feel. I reframed it, instead of seeing, I used taste, because what we figured out on a bar get away with some colleagues that they actually want to know what's the cuisine like in the different culture. They want to hear what's actually, when I go into your culture or in your country, what am I supposed to try? There's also this part of say and do, so what are actually your beliefs, or what is shaping you. I also asked once a question, how do you queue? Because it's so interesting in seeing how, for example, someone from France queues, will actually stand in a queue which looks like a snake, or people like from Germany. I mean, I'm from Germany. I can gossip. They stand basically in a queue. It has to be in a certain order. Or there are cultures who actually just push their way through. They are just staying and waiting. They're beautiful YouTube tutorials. If you want to have a good laugh with your teams, just watch those, because they really show how amazing we are acting in public spaces. And there's such a thing like, what do they hear? How do they get influenced? What is actually shaping their views and impressions? And the pain and gain and such things. You can always reshape it. Those things are something you can also redo, but what it does is, in the first stage, which I do with all the different cultures, is I invite them to fill out their own empathy map. So what I did, I show you a couple of pictures, physically and remote. So I did it both. I tested it with a lot of people, and it's like absolutely amazing to let them just for 10, 15, 20 minutes, maybe fill it out together in a group. You see on those pictures as well that we had one beautiful moment where the colleagues just hugged each other, because the one colleague came from Ukraine and the other from Russia, and with the current situation, you know how challenging that is, and both filled out this map and basically said, it's not our war, we are friends. And that just really, that was a movement, an emotional moment, but it was really moving the colleagues. And then we had the people from the Netherlands, people from India, people from Poland, from Germany, Portugal, Spain, and they all just introduced us, after the filling it out, introduced us into their cultures. And we had a nice chat. We had like, okay, this is how you see yourself. This is how you perceive your own culture. And then they ask questions. How do I give feedback? How do I receive feedback? How do you handle certain situations? What's actually a political situation in your country? And then they figured out, oh, we do have something in common. Oh, fraud is not just one thing in one country. It is something that happens everywhere, but it has different shades or fragrances to it. Having this dialogue with the colleagues just showed us how important it is to build the spaces of understanding your own culture and introducing others into it. And then from there, going to the next step, basically addressing how do we create our own. Yeah. And this is also pictures from the remote session. It's not as emotional, I figured, because when I do that in a physical room, I also bring the sweets of the country we're doing the workshop in. So I buy all these sweets and the tasteful things they actually bring in, give them something to eat and to drink, so they can actually exchange what's actually making the culture so special as well. So you can kind of vary it. If you do it remote, you have to kind of engage them also in a way of sharing some videos, sharing some ways how they do the things, using more their presence in it as well. I've done it, I think, up till now with 13, 14 different cultures at the same time, and it's amazing. You can do that in 3 hours. So don't worry, it's not too much time, but 3 hours is a good time to actually get it done. If you are in favor of a rather more scientific basis, I mean, I studied intercultural competences when I was younger, but there are good books about it, and there's one page I like to share, and I link it for you in the chat. there is such a thing like Hochrefe. Hochrefe was once the basis for the different cultures. He basically divided he compared different cultures. I think he worked for IBM and basically analyzed it. And here you see one example only, power distance. So in comparison, Estonia, Germany, India, and Poland, who has which extremes. And I basically also prepared for my teams such a handout so they can actually read through it if they are interested, instead of just reading the whole page online. But there's just this possibility of seeing, okay, if I'm rather on a high level or on a low level, what does it actually mean? How am I perceived? And in regard of accepting or not accepting the distribution of power. So some of our problems, for example, in the teams came in particular of the different expectations. If I'm coming from Estonia, I actually refer to rather an equal share of power. I don't want to have this kind of hierarchy from the top to the bottom. If I'm rather from Poland, I do see hierarchies actually as very beneficial, and I do respect them very much and follow their advice rather than I challenge it. So that gave us in our teams actually a possibility to go rather into this, okay, this is how maybe we get perceived, or this is maybe how we do certain things. And from there, how do we want to change it? How do we want to address it? There are good books about it. So I didn't make it all up. It's like the culture map from Erin Meyer. She's an amazing one. I read a couple of books to reflect on myself, because really, I'm rather in a more beneficial situation of being white and blonde and whatever else, but I'm a foreigner myself in the country. But I also had to read books like White Fragility to actually start reflecting on my own perception or understanding of how much do I benefit actually being me, but if I have my full name written out, how little benefits do I actually have? So we didn't go into the racism subject in this workshop, but it is a subject which has to somehow be addressed. And one way is to basically not hiding it, but really tackling it, while we are actually not able always to change the whole system. But what we can do is, in our context with the teams we're working with and with the management, we're doing those transformations to actually tackle it in that way. And it's not just fun, it's actually opening up different doors. So that is my workshop. And I do believe that we can all just get better if we really face it.
Excellent. Cool.
It's
Thank you.
fantastic. Thank
That
you.
was amazing. I will share my screen. So if you do have a mobile device, I would ask you to. I've just gone the wrong way. Oh, there we go. If you're able to scan that QR code, you'll be able to give Pat some feedback. Or you can go to menti.com and enter the code. That'll allow, there's a few sliders on there, and I'll be able to provide Pat with some feedback later on. So have people got questions while people are doing that? And I'll leave it up for some time, because I know people weren't expecting it. But has anybody got any questions? Oh, I'm screen sharing, aren't I? So there we go. Prem, you'll have to look for people putting hands up. So I've got a question, Pat. You said you'd run that with a number of people from different backgrounds, different cultures. What would you say is the most difficult aspect of running the actual workshop?
Helping people who are stuck reflecting on their own culture to be rather more pragmatic and thinking of this point of bias and prejudice. So put yourself into the feet of how would this person perceive you. It's this changing the perspectives, and talking about your own culture requires a lot of self-reflection. So it's like helping them through that stage with questions and with guidance sometimes. That was actually the most challenging one, especially in groups where there was only 1 or 2 people per country there. And I had that in Portugal because that wasn't much represented. So if there are more people, then they kind of say, no, but this is the way how we are. And no, this is what people say about us. So the more people, the easier it is.
So you mentioned there, this is what people say about us. Is that, can that affect the results a little bit about people putting down things that they expect people to see about them?
I thought that it might be that way, but I got kind of surprised because let's take Germany, right? You got the north, the east, the south, the west, and they have all the different fragrances. If you go into a different culture, they have the same. Some differentiate only between east and west. I don't know, but every culture has its own differentiation. And then the people kind of started reflecting and say, but if you're in the north, you get this kind of food, or if you're in the south, you get kind of this way of talking to each other, or less openness. Like, I grew up also in the Netherlands, so I'm rather straightforward, and I'm not making it sound nice. I just want to help you, so I give it to you straight without any nice flowers with it. But if I'm in the south of Germany, which is currently the case, I'm challenged because I need to adapt the way how I speak to the people, because they don't like to be talk to like that. I get perceived as unpolite. So, it doesn't mean that it's always that way. Yes, it is a generalization, but it is important to talk about those to clean actually the air of what might the other person think of me, or what doesn't the person think of me.
Cool. Right. I will hopefully
can I ask can I ask the other side of the question? What is the most amazing thing that happened from these workshops?
I mean, the one which gave us actually some tears or made us actually nearly cry was this moment when Ukraine and Russia started working together. They straight away said, we do it together. There is no separation because we belong together. And we don't fight, especially now in the current situation. One other moment we had that was back then remote in a COVID time, where the team was really challenged and had just trouble. There were like 30 people in that team. I mean, a team of 30 people, really. And they started seeing each other from a different perspective. In that moment where they actually talked about it, said, this is how you think we are. And, okay, this is the perception. And that kind of opened up some doors for a conversation and a dialogue on a completely different level. And another thing I find personally beautiful is some cultures thought of certain other cultures about in a certain way. And then they said, we were surprised how much we actually have in common.
Yeah,
we're human beings, by the way.
I can.
Sorry.
No, I can relate to many of those things, especially the first one, Ukraine and Russia. When you mentioned, I'm sure people know about the rivalry between India and Pakistan. And when I was working in India, I think at that time there was a hot war going on between the two countries at the borders, whereas we had people from Pakistan as course attendee in India, and we immediately gelled together. And in UK, I have had friends from Pakistan. We immediately gelled together, and we even speak similar languages. That those perceptions change, and when you meet human to human, I totally agree, and it's a very worthy workshop to explore much further in depth. Probably next year, definitely.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Tutu asked, did you say that you'd done the exercises virtually as well, Pat?
Yeah,
Was,
both.
was that on Mural or was it in MS Teams, or how did you run it?
I love working with Zoom, by the way. I did it in Miro because I'm also a huge fan of Miro. I have to adapt to Mural. You can do it basically with every whiteboard. I do recommend to write it down, because going back in a half year, because what I did also with some teams is going back in a half year and say, and what did we do out of what we actually did there 6 months ago? Because it's something starts changing, especially when you're as a coach guiding them through this change, making things somehow different, accessible, like their own prejudice about the others, and allowing to speak up about what I believe about someone. Also, it's not just prejudice, but also the beliefs we have, right? This person must be this way because this is my experience from one moment in life, and it changes. So it kind of, yeah, it kind of does something. I don't know how to explain it, but it does something to the people.
If there is a point for just one last question before we move on to the next talk. Have you tried this between men and women?
Oh, not yet, but I like the idea, because the question would also be, and what is he, she, it, right? What is with the other groups?
Yeah.
You can spin it in a completely different direction and very creative. I like that.
Like to hear your result.
I will tackle that one. I have a team where I can actually explore that.
Yeah. Cool.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Obviously, round of applause, please, for Pat.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Excellent. Right. Next is Farah, and Farah has an agile poem.
I do. Right, let me share. Okay, Kinski, yeah?
Yeah, we can see.
All right, well, now for something completely different, as they say. Are you sitting comfortably? Then I'll begin. The sorry tale of a project fail. Welcome, my friends. Do gather round for a grisly a tale, as can be found. Oh, okay, not quite grisly, but still a tale of mistakes and woe and a project fail. Perchance you'll blanch when I confess our project seemed like a success. We iterated and delivered. At release sign-off, I barely quivered. Confident all would be impressed. Imagine then quite how distressed I was to find they did not care. They behaved as if I wasn't there. When I returned to face the team, I tried to smile and make it seem as if their work was well received, but I could tell they weren't deceived. We had done well, yet somehow, sadly, I'd failed my team extremely badly. With time gone by, I can look back and see the places I lost track. To start with, I was not courageous. I found low trust meetings were contagious. The managers saw a scrum master as a whip to make the teams work faster. And that, a weekly forum where we all maintained utmost decorum. Dare to paint your project ungreen and you'd be seen to contravene the sacred code of reporting status and find your career put on hiatus. Such was the climate of cold fear. But that's no excuse to be unclear. A green project has no meaning. In fact, it's rather overweening if it means we all pretended until the project nearly ended. When the truth bursts overnight, green flips to red in an almighty mess of apparent sudden failure of the most catastrophic nature. But remember, it runs in both directions, from red to green as we make corrections. Our project had red, and it dimmed to amber, and breathless to true green we did clamber. But they didn't care, because I didn't say what really happened on the way. I learned that it's imperative to tell an honest narrative. These days, yeah, I get my ears chewed off, but afterwards my cap I doff to higher ups who appreciate knowing that I'm talking straight. They get that it lets them plan too, and helps us to find the breakthrough to mitigate the current risk, so we can deal with it in brisk, efficient ways. Or at least warn the business of a looming thorn. And slowly they begin to trust we will not suddenly combust. There's power in transparency to avoid mistrust and hostility. It may not be all laughs and smiles, but it's better when we share our trials. In the end, what's truly tragic is believing that success is magic. So that's my tale to tell. But one more thing before I say farewell. If you enjoyed listening along, you may also enjoy my Agile song. Thank you. The end.
Oh, we were going to get a song at the end there, Farah.
I'll post the link in the chat.
I was actually thinking I would hear a song or something.
That was great.
Thank you. Let's see if I can get the Zoom window back so that I can stop sharing. Where are you all? Where are you all? Meeting controls. There we go. How on earth do I stop this from over here? There we go. There we go. And there's here are the links.
That is beautiful. That is beautiful.
It's a true story as well.
Excellent.
I didn't have a doubt.
Let's just, I will, obviously I will share my screen again so that people can use a QR code and give feedback. Oh, and there we go. So there's Farah's QR code. If you can't use the QR code, there's a Menti website there and the code to enter as well. I'll give people some time to do that. Enter the code. So Farah, I've got to ask, what was the inspiration behind the poem?
Well, I wanted to communicate something about transparency and a bit of courage, but I wasn't sure how to make it so interesting, so I made it in rhyme.
Nice. Have you presented it within a company? What was the reception like?
I have not presented it at a company meeting. I have presented it once before at an Agile meetup, but I have shared the text with some people. It is quite long when it's written down, though.
Yeah. Oh, someone said the code's not working for Menti. Let me just. Oh, sorry, I have put the wrong code there. Let me provide a new code in the chat window. For some reason, I didn't send that to everyone. There we go. There's the correct code. Yeah, that's the correct code. Cool. So, are you going to do any more poems based on agility, a Christmas one, or Easter, or?
I have just been working on a Kanban song, and I have something in the pipeline which may be a poem or a song, which is about really bad meetings. It's kind of about potatoes as well, but you know, you have to wait and see what that means if it ever gets live.
Excellent. Okay. I'll just check. Has anybody else got a question for Farah?
No, this is not a question, just an observation of an appreciation of the innovation she's brought into the agile space. And this is the first one for me. I mean, I've never seen that before. And it's a question of people are now bringing a lot of the things which we enjoy on the other side of life into the workspace to make things more meaningful and to give us some sort of spice and flavor to the work we do. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Really. And so something totally different from what I've seen before. Did you put all the animation, the drawings together as well?
So the drawings are from Bitmoji.
Oh, okay. But you still needed to make them.
The phone made them for me. But yeah, they are by Bitmoji, yeah. And the other images are credited into pexels on each slide.
Right. So hopefully everyone's been able to give Farah some feedback. And next is David with agility in personal development. Okay.
Hi.
Hi, David.
I feel bad now that I haven't made my presentation rhyme. A little bit. Okay, cool. Let me share my screen and let's see how that works. Okay, can people see that? Yep. Okay, great. Just bear with me one moment. I just need to get that. Okay, great. My talk today is about agility and personal development. This is me. I'm an engineering manager and an agile coach at Assets Capital, and sort of my talks based around my previous experience in agile, and then sort of my most recent experience at Assets, sort of being responsible for the personal development of 15 software engineers. And also I'm the organizer of the Kanban Mentoring Circle meetup. So I'm kind of interested in the Kanban song. That's kind of interesting. So I don't know about you guys, but you know, I found in the past that when it comes to setting personal development objectives, they kind of haven't really worked out for me, and I could see that happening with others at Assets. And so, you know, they cannot be very agile. You know, they can get lost in the sort of everyday, or they cease to be relevant, you know, like fairly quickly, you know, 2, 4, 6, 8 weeks down the line, or quite often people try and do just too many of them, and then we only partially achieve them. So I was inspired by a book called 9 Lies About Work by Ashley Goodall and Marcus Buckingham, BJ Fogg's book on tiny habits, and then sort of pairing that with my agile experience. just a quick question. I can't really see most of you, but have people come across 9 Lies About Work? I don't know. No. Okay.
Oh.
So, okay. So I looked at those books and pairing that with my Agile experience. Yeah, I kind of had an idea, which was about applying Agile product development sort of concepts to this problem. Because at the end of the day, you know, we're trying to develop the person as a product. That's what we're trying to you know, take things forward in that way. And so kind of what does that look like? So some of you, you know, or I would imagine quite a lot of you, you know, kind of a little bit familiar in this model. You know, it's a fairly simplistic model, you know, and applying this to sort of personal development, you know, getting people to share with you where their vision is, where they're going, where they want to be in 6, 9, 12 months, and then the sort of goals that will help you achieve that vision. What kind of goals can you achieve in like 4 to 6 weeks? And then sort of like going down to the lowest level, like at a sort of story level, what's a slice of value that you know it's going to get you along that pathway, and what you're going to achieve for this week? You know, what's your sort of micro objective for this week? And the key to success in applying this approach is the weekly one-to-ones. And that's where I was using it to work with people to sort of unblock and inspect and adapt and sort of celebrate that success on a weekly basis, because that kind of, you wanted to build that habit with people of that sort of personal development, and that habit is sort of built on the foundations of that sort of frequent weekly success. So obviously this approach also allows us to feed into sort of other Agile sort of techniques, you know, like frequent delivery and fast feedback and limiting our work in progress. So the do's and don'ts, my experience in trying this approach. You know, do give time to one-to-ones. Like I think there's quite a variety out there in terms of how people deal with one-to-ones, and you know, having this weekly one-to-one where you were giving people time and you're having time to explore and sort of, you know, understand where they wanted to go. You know, if you tried to do it on a longer time frame, you kind of got away from it, and you also got away from this whole idea of like, you know, we're going to achieve something this week. What's the small thing you're going to achieve this week? So yeah, this approach, I use the term micro objectives. Sometimes when I use that, people kind of go, "Oh, micromanagement. This is not what this is about." And you know, you don't want to let other people turn that into that as well. Do visions instead of goals. When I was trying to work with people on their visions, and this is an area that I really kind of want to sort of get better in myself, is that quite often they would come and we'd be talking about goals at that higher level instead of like what was the overall vision, and also, you know, trying to make it sort of really sort of outcome focused. Don't do too many goals. You know, I said this sort of this structure of vision, goals, and then sort of like micro objectives or the stories. It's like, you know, with the goals, if you really go for 1 or 2 or maybe 3, because quite often what was happening was that people were achieving one goal and then would sort of pivot or would go in a different direction. Whereas if we start to build like a whole sort of roadmap of goals, it's kind of, that's kind of quite waterfall anyhow. So yeah, that was you're kind of setting yourself up to a little bit of failure there. So don't do big micro objectives. Make it a week, make it small, make it kind on yourself. You know, when I started doing this with people, like they would, you know, it was like, oh, I didn't achieve it this week. And it was like, you know, there was a lot of sort of angst around that. And it was like, be kind to yourself, make it achievable, make it the thing that you can do in a week. So yeah, and of course, limit work in progress. You know, I'd get people go, well, I want to do 2 micro objectives this week. You know, no, let's just keep that, you know, our work system of 1 micro objectives. You get your focus on it, you do it, we celebrate the success, we understand why you didn't achieve that, and we can pivot and we can you know, move forward on that. So the kind of takeaway from this is like, start small and make it feel good. Obviously, I've been talking here about personal development goals. However, there's you know, obviously there's resonance in this approach across, you know, in different sort of got different other goals. And I think this was what came out of my reading from 9 Lies About Work, is like, we talk a lot about agility and how we're managing the flow of work, but maybe we should also be thinking about the agility and like how we're actually managing people, like that day-to-day management, and how they're sitting within a management structure. So yeah, I've mentioned it about 3 times. I don't get any kickback from anybody buying this book, but it seriously blew my mind when I read this book. You know, if you're managing people, or you want to manage people, or you're just interested in how, you know, how the world of work works, yeah, it's a great great book, actually, about how the world of work works or actually doesn't work. So yeah. So yeah, I'm the organizer of the Kanban Mentoring Circle. That's I'll do a quick plug there. That's our next session, and yeah, that's the end. That's me on LinkedIn. You know, contact me and talk to me if this is interesting or you've got different views. So yeah, there you go.
Cool.
And I'll
Thank you.
Thank you.
have to try and find now where I end the
Okay. Screen
give me
share.
a moment on this.
Thank you. That was very good. Thank you, David.
Am I still showing? Yep. There you go.
Okay. So round of applause for David, please. Right, I will share David's slide. I've just noticed that the codes have all changed, so I will put the correct code into the chat window. The QR code should still work, but so. And there we go, that's to David. The correct code is actually 26901885, but I will put it into the chat as well. Okay. On the Zoom. Oh, send to everyone. 2690. Right. So, David, what do you find is the is people's approach when you response when you take that approach with them on their personal goals, their personal development? Is it something that you use with other people, or is it something you've only used for yourself?
No, so it's you. So I used it with the team I was managing. as an engineering manager. And the people were kind of like, when you first introduced this, there's two levels. Okay, one is the kind of like the micro objectives level, and the sort of like the concern there is from people is like, are you trying to micromanage me? And so that's one sort of thing, and that's why I'm always at pains about this. Is not about micromanagement. Be kind to yourself. We just want to create success, and we want to build on that success. And then from the other end, it was like, you know, maybe it was, you know, the team that I was working with, but they really hadn't sort of vocalized their vision about where they wanted to go to, and so that was very much a sort of like something that we had to get through and work on.
Okay. And so I've had a similar experience with the one-to-ones. Like when I put a one-to-one in, someone turned around. It probably relates to a little bit what Pat was doing. I put in a one-to-one, and they were immediately said, "What am I in trouble for?"
Yeah.
And I was like, "Whoa, you're not in trouble." Maybe it's the terminology of one-to-one, and they were like, "Yeah, one-to-ones here mean that you're having a one-to-one with a manager, and you're not going to come out a bit happy." And I was like, "Oh." I realized I'd sent out these invitations to a whole team. And, no, should have called it a catch-up or something else. But you say that you change people's being kind to them and letting them, you know, adapt and be flexible with their goals. Did you see any problems caused by that? Like people constantly going, "Oh, I've not had time to do it this week," or do you feel that most people were on board with it?
Well, that's where you were trying to like, okay, let's understand why you're not achieving it, and kind of being sort of more sort of like, you know, being more agile about it. You know, what is the blockers? How can we remove the blockers? Or was this micro objective just too big? Like make it. I want to make it as small so that you can actually achieve it, so that we can start building on that. Because when people are not achieving it, you're just not really getting anywhere. So yeah, it was trying to get it down to that level. Actually, what can you do? Just read a page. That's fine. Watch a video. That's fine. You know, but we want to keep on moving. And yeah.
So would you say that's one of the tips that, and that's to me, I'll confess, old project management sort of manipulation. It was always that, hey, I'm going to set you a goal that's so simple that I know the team's going to achieve it, but the team's going to have a high morale because they achieved it. Do you think that that's the same sort of thing where you agree something so small at the beginning that it gives that person the, hey, I'm achieving things, like you said, even if it's just a page, and it builds up their own confidence on what they can do?
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, this is from this it's BJ Fogg, I think, BJ Fogg, Small Habits book. You know, it's really about like building these little small habits so you're getting success. You're just, it's just second nature to you. We just keep on talking, you know, you keep on moving forward. So yeah.
Sorry, I realised I've asked all the questions and other people might answer. Apologies. So I'll be quiet for a few minutes if people want to write them in the chat. Or Farah's got a hand up. There we go.
Yeah, I'm really interested about using micro goals and larger objectives, either as combined things, so small things working towards large things, or as different tracks. How do they feed on each other, or not healthy or
Yeah.
unhealthy.
No, they do feed on each other, because like it's these small micro objectives that you're building towards achieving that sort of goal that's like 4 to 6 weeks, that sort of, iteration. So yeah, they're a part of that. And you sort of like, when this is why I talked about not having too many goals, because let's start with the first goal. Let's start on the first step to get you towards your vision, and then let's break that down, break it down into stories or micro objectives, and then let's just start working on that and just like iterating on it week by week. And like the goals may not be 4 to 6 weeks, they may be slightly longer, or they might be slightly less, but again, we're trying to get this sort of approach where we're not just setting these goals, these big goals that people only kind of like get halfway towards, or maybe they set too many goals and they only get like maybe half of one done, half another. It's like, let's just try and minimize your work in progress. So yeah, does that answer your question? Yeah.
Okay, I'll just see if anyone else has put anything in the chat window. Okay, I've got another question, which is, David, do you find that this is sorry, you said you use Kanban, so maybe there's not a product owner, but there's obviously someone in the business who's wanting to set the priorities as well. Do you find that same sort of mentality around setting those atomic or small goals is helpful with the actual development teams as well themselves, so on a product that you're developing or on a service that's in production? Hey, let's not set a goal that's so massive that the actual team can't make it. We need to have that balance that, yes, you're able to make this. And is it?
Yeah, no, very much so. Like when I've done like retros, I try and get people just to focus down on like one improvement. It's always trying to take it down to the smallest thing that we can sort of slice to move us forward, because quite often, like I say, we set things too high. We don't consider all our other work in progress, and we set things too high, and we don't achieve them, and then nobody's left feeling particularly good about it, are they? So definitely, I think it sort of works at that team level. I tried to do it at the department level with the sort of micro objectives approach, but it was just I was sort of pushing people a bit too far. I'd like to go back and try it again as this is our way of improvement at the department level, that we actually slice it on a week by week, and but it's like a total change of mindset for some people. Because they're like, we set a goal. Yeah. You set a goal for about the next 4 weeks or something like that. And it's like, we get there and you've never done it. So, yeah.
I think this is a familiar story. I can see people nodding along. I have been there.
Yeah. or when people say stretch goals, literally, not that I'm advocating violence towards anybody, but sometimes when I hear people say stretch goals, I really want to sort of like, strangle them. So.
Okay, thank you. So, our final speaker for tonight is Conrad.
Hello.
Welcome, Conrad.
First of all, I apologize. My camera decided to not work. So I'm sorry you're going to be talking to a blank screen. I really apologize. I tried to fix it, but as you know, tech does what it does when it does it.
It does.
So apologies for that. Okay, so I'm going to try and be as quick as possible. I'm usually quite verbose, and that's one of my biggest challenges. So maybe David, you might help me with that actually. All right, so I'll try and make this keep to the 10-minute time. No, that's the wrong one. What am I sharing? I think I'm sharing the wrong one. Let's see. Share screen. Let's start. Let's try again. Okay, what are you seeing? Are you seeing my presentation? No. No?
Yes.
I'm seeing
Yes.
obstacles.
Okay,
Slide 5.
Brilliant. Okay, great stuff. Okay, so let's go back to, where are we? Okay. Excuse me. Okay, so I like to do this as a conversation as much as possible. So with trying to respect the time box as well, I'm going to try and move this as quickly as possible, but it'll be really good if I'm going to ask a couple, some questions, and if we can just sort of walk our way through this together. So first, I have a question, and you saw. Let's spend 1 minute whether this is true or false. So agile concepts are easy to convey to stakeholders usually. Would you say this is true, or is that false, or something in between?
In between.
Okay. Anybody else has a view on this? No?
I would say it depends upon the actual stakeholders.
Yeah, that is the. I was hoping nobody came up with the depends. Yeah.
Oh, I used to be a consultant.
But that happens. With the with a group of coaches, we love that. Depends. Right. So my personal experience is that some concepts can be quite. A lot of the agile concepts can be quite difficult to convey. And I think for me personally, it's because I get it, I understand it, that I've internalized it. But then in certain circumstances, I struggle to actually land the message properly to a stakeholder, right? In such a way that they're able to properly connect to it. And over the years, what I realized that if I'm able to connect the why to the what's in it for me, that usually helps. So this came from the stand-up, particularly came from quite a bit of pain I had experienced for a while, where you've got stakeholders saying, well, okay, you do stand-ups. We know the book says it does, you do stand-ups, or the playbook or whatever it is. There are very few agile books. You should do stand-ups. But usually you see them quite, sort of prancing the floor, getting quite annoyed that they've got all these people who just, who seem to be spending 10, 15 minutes just being happy, clappy, and they're kind of thinking, actually, you're not doing any much work, sort of thing. And they tend to, by the behavior, make teams become a little bit more less settled, which then provides, the impetus for negative behavior in terms of them not, wanting to really embrace that properly. So I came up with this sort of way of trying to land this message in such a way that the why and the true purpose of the stand-up is understood, as well as connecting that to a typical stakeholder. And why is this beneficial to me that you guys do this, right? Sort of thing, try and get them on board. So the daily stand-up, well, it's daily, frequent. I don't tend to call it daily stand-up these days anymore, because it's not always daily, is it? So what is the question here for everyone? What is the most key potentially actionable output. What are those? We'll say, or what is it? Keyword, they've been output.
So for me, it's that the team have a plan of what work they're going to do between now and the next time we get together.
All right. Okay, that's one. That's a good one. Anybody else has any insights to share here?
If anybody's stuck, we can help them with it.
Right. So if they're stuck, we can help them with it. We need, it gives us some idea of the action plan going forward from that point on. So the question though is, what are these things? What are they? I mean, what do these things really mean to a project? What do they mean to an organization? What do they mean to the team? What do they mean to stakeholders? These things these outputs that we're looking to get.
Don't talk, okay?
Yeah. A clue there, perhaps. What are they?
Roadblocks.
The roadblocks, exactly, right? But what is a roadblock, though? What does a roadblock portend for the mission?
Slow.
Yeah, it slows us down. Okay, but what is the impact of, or the result of us being slowed down?
Slow delivery.
Yes, no delivery. And what does that mean?
Getting value to customer very late.
Okay. All right. So all of these things really, they are all sort of either they represent something negative, something that is going to be dispositive for our project or for our delivery, for our commitment, right? So in truth, they are obstacles to mission delivery, and an obstacle is a risk. Okay. So amongst the other things that is stand-up, other benefits we get from stand-up or from stand-ups, is about, they're majorly about being able to get in front of potential challenges before they become problems, snowball into problems where possible. In other instances as well, it might be giving us information that allows us to pivot on time, again, before they become a challenge or a blocker. These are risks to your project, okay? So how I tend to do this is when I work with stakeholders, we'll kind of go through this conversation, trying to sort of get them to think this through as we step through it, to highlight the fact that it's a risk. Now, what are risks? What's the stand-up eventually then? The way I summarize it is that a stand-up acts like an early detection system, like a smoke alarm, right? It's an early warning system that's built into the way we work, that helps us ensure that, we are able to prevent fires rather than put fires out, and help us minimize firefighting where it is not possible to entirely avoid them. Now, taking this back to what is in it for me, right? Now, most managers, I think it's fair to say some like 70–80% of the work that they do usually relies on information so that they can make the right decisions in a timely manner. Now, once they begin to realize that actually the stand-up is about providing those insights in a timely manner, to them, to make sure that they're making timely managerial decisions that help the project and help make sure that the project or the product is put back on track or stays on track, it becomes a slightly different view we have from that. So the sort of things I would typically have a point, sort of drive home is, the stand-up gives information to you in advance, right? And it's in a transparent manner in such a way that you're not going around hunting for information, because you know where to find the information at the team level where the work has actually been done, and you're getting that fresh hot off the press, right? So simply by walking the boards or by being part of attending stand-ups, you're getting that information quite early. And that's also usually a segue for me to talk about, how using the tools, whatever the tool the organization has, with this Jira or whatever it is that they're using as information radiators, is beneficial to them as well. Because again, that is one other challenge that typically a lot of what I have found in my journey anyway, that a lot of managers or leadership cadre tend to have, making that switch from information, waiting for information to be presented to them by their reports, to using the tools you have to actually have 24/7, if you like, access to real-time information, which then means that the sort of questions they would begin to ask is a different type, right? So whereas when you're hunting for information, and you're kind of in the dark, the sort of questions people tend to ask will be, why? Why is this? Why is that? Having that information upfront and in a transparent manner, sort of continuously and early as well, means that the nature of the questions you ask, or people, they begin to ask slightly different. So, we kind of transition from why to how, right? It's a case of, okay, how can I help? Right? How can I, how can I help you resolve this problem? Stuff like that. Again, that kind of comes from the fact that, with the transparency that the agile way of working gives you, typically using user stories and things like that, it makes it a lot easier to have an understanding of what the outcomes you're looking for are, what good looks like. So it kind of shaves off a lot of the loss in translation that tend to create secondary and tertiary work across organizations, because there's just a lack of understanding, sort of thing. So yeah, I would leave it at that. So my experience is, all of the times I've used this over the years, it's been quite stunning in many instances how that that penny drops, and there's a pretty much instant turnaround. On one particular project I worked on, or program works I worked on, it was the very senior accountable exec who was actually quite antagonistic towards the stand-ups. Went through this process, and the very next day, he, at the town hall, he sent out a comes out to everyone saying, you know what, from now on, I want to ensure that all teams have stand-ups, and also all of your product owners and sort of, you know, your managers that are all involved in or with the teams and the products should also attend standards, because, you know, this is what I learned, to sort of share the insight with them, which is quite good. So it can be quite powerful in that regards. Okay, so I've kind of abbreviated this and sort of, you know, jumped through it very quickly because of the time limit, but that brings us to the end of this, really. So the way I kind of summarize this usually is that an Agile stand-up event is a continuous de-risking and risk management exercise that gives stakeholders the proactive control needed to keep on track and deliver value on time. Questions? I can't see you guys. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I wasn't sure if I can see them.
Thank you. That was very good.
Yeah. So you mentioned there that you've had some success with this when talking to your stakeholders. Have you had to use it with anyone else as well?
Yes, I use it with teams as well themselves. Yeah.
Okay.
Directly, because there are also in times when you'll have teams who just think, you know what, this is a bit of a waste of time, right? Why do we need to do this? We know what we're doing already. We're very, you know, been working together a long time, or, you know, we're individually, you know, sort of really good at what we do. And there really is no point in us, you know, coming together 15 minutes saying, I'd rather just put my head down and just work, sort of thing. So yes, it works just as well. So, you know, it's not just stakeholders that this works with. It works with the teams directly themselves pretty much all the time.
Before the next person asks a question, I'd just like to get everyone to put their hands together and say thank you to Conrad.
Thank you.
Round of applause. I'll flash up your the QR code so that people can give you ratings for the presentation.
Brilliant, thank you.
Yeah. Let me just. I think my don't tell me my keyboard battery just died. It did. It's not a problem. There we go. There we go. And that Menti code should also work. So you can use a QR code or the Menti code and be able to give Conrad some feedback. And I'll leave that up for a while so people can ask questions as well now. Sorry. People are all busy now filling in the survey.
That's fine. Usually that means it's either very rubbish or very good. So we'll find out.
Right. Hopefully everyone's been able to get that code or QR. Oh, let me just.
Okay.
Thank
you for
so I will go back to stop sharing. Right. Has anybody got any questions for Conrad? There we
go. Are you okay to share the slides, because there's the starting of the presentation?
Yeah, happy to do that.
Thank you.
It's on YouTube as well, Suresh, because we live stream on YouTube, so you can go back and watch.
Okay, go back and watch it. Sure. So where do I find the link? Do I need to just search on the YouTube? So
yeah.
I can post the link. You can search for on YouTube. You can search for Telford Agile. You might
Telford Agile. Yeah, no, I'll do that then. Thank you.
Yeah. No, I will post the link.
No, just thank you.
Farah's got a question.
Yeah. You talked about getting stakeholders involved, and then you mentioned about using this with teams as well. Have you ever had a situation where those two elements had a really different view of what should come out of the stand-up, and how did you deal with that, if you have?
Yeah, I think I would say that in my experience, there is almost always a different view for those two groups about what the stand-up is, right? To varying degrees. And this is why, like I said, I try to go back to the basics and connect the why with the what's in it for me sort of thing, right? And go through that process. What I have found so far is that once we're able to walk through that and people actually begin to associate the stand-up process and actions with risks, that's usually, you know, sort of a eureka moment, right? Because for a manager or for a senior stakeholder, it's about, you know, what they care about is how do we manage the risks, right? How do we make sure that we're on time? How do we make sure that we're not sort of blindsided? So, you know, it's all about risk management, isn't it, as well? And for teams as well, again, it's also about that as well. It's just that one is from a tactical, you know, looking at it from a tactical perspective, and the other one is looking at it from a strategic perspective, if you like. So I find that regardless of what positions they had or what ideas they had before, once we're able to, you know, sort of land the idea that this is about helping you manage risks, usually that is something that is quite universal to everyone. They kind of get it, sort of thing.
Cool, thank you.
Thanks.
Can I ask a quick question?
Yeah.
Did you how have you found though with teams like a very interesting take on it, by the way. I really liked it. But how do you know? Also the analogy of the fire, you know, the early warning system. How have you found about teams' attention to the blinking red light on the early warning system? Because sometimes that's a common thing that I've seen in stand-ups where we kind of like maybe skim over the blockers, or the blockers might become invisible. Like how did you sort of deal with that with the team?
So let me get your question right. So when you use the metaphor of blinking red lights, what do you mean? You mean
like early warning system? You're saying like basically your stand-up is allowing you to identify those risks and identify where things are going to go wrong. Is that with that? Yeah.
So the way I tend to sort of put our arms around that is to at that point tap on the importance of ensuring that when you exit that stand-up, you have an action plan rather than just sort of, you know, this is what's happening, you kind of go away. And that's where if you've got a Scrum Master, you know, where, you know, sort of stress the fact that, you know, right after the stand-up, the Scrum Master, if they have one, their job is to ensure that they've got this, if you like, this list of blockers and to actually action it, you know, immediately, sort of thing. And where I am in those, you know, as a coach, I will tend to facilitate right after this talk for a little while. I tend to sort of be in those stand-ups to try and reinforce that behavior, sort of thing. Yeah, so it really is about, you know, just saying, okay, right, you know, it's not enough to have red warning flashing lights, right? It's about what you do with it. And again, that's a big is a big insight for most teams, right? Is very similar to the retrospective versus lessons learned type thing, right? Where you try to say, you know, yeah, lessons learned, you could, you know, you kind of go through the same process with some differences. However, the key thing is with your retrospective, you're making sure that, you know, you come out of there with clear set of collaboratively agreed actions you're going to take to fix this, and that you implement that immediately for the next iteration. So it's the same thing as sort of principle I apply here to say, these are challenges you found and you need to action them immediately to fix them. Otherwise, they don't go away, right? If just finding risks without a plan to mitigate against them it's a bit of a exercise in futility, really. So yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Anyone else? I'm just checking the chat. No.
Thank you, No, I just want to thank you, Conrad, for coming along at the last minute. I chased him at the last minute and brought him here.
No worries at all. My pleasure.
I can see Tyra clapping as well. Yes, thank you.
Thank you to all the speakers. Thank you to all the speakers and our book reviewer this month.
He might be back next month. Right. I will wrap up with the what is coming next. So next Telford Agile virtual meetup is Tuesday the 13th of December. We will send out details. We'll post on the meetup website and also on LinkedIn. There's a ask there for you to share it on LinkedIn or any other platform of your choice. There will be one book a month. The talk title is to be confirmed. Have I got that right? Or is Prem about to tell me, but you've updated it? And I think on December's we normally do an Agile coffee. I may be wrong. Lean coffee. Yeah. You can find myself and Prem on LinkedIn. And you can also send us feedback via meetup message, via LinkedIn post, or to our email address at telford.agile@gmail.com. This meetup is sponsored by Capgemini. And so there's a bit here where there's about Capgemini careers. So if you know someone who's a business analyst, a technical business analyst, or a Scala developer, and you know that they're looking for a permanent role, drop me a line or put us in contact via LinkedIn or something like that. We currently have positions available in the HMRC market unit. And obviously, it's an amazing place to work. I would say that because I work there and because they're sponsoring us. But yes, there are positions available at the moment. And with that, I'd just like to say thank you from myself and Prem. Massive thank you to all of our speakers again. Yeah, they were really great. If you did miss some of the talks, it has been recorded, so it will be available on YouTube later on.
Yeah, and to the speakers as well, your talks will be available on YouTube, so you can forward this to any other people. You can add the link in your CV for when you are going for your next role. So it's going to be there always. So easy to access, easy to find, easy to add to your LinkedIn, your CV, anywhere.
Yeah, and to the speakers, I'll send you the feedback separately on a link. Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Marvelous. Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Bye. Bye.
Yeah,
bye. Sorry, Prem, I thought you had something to say.
I was going to say I will edit and post the separate talks separately so that they don't have to add like this is the bunch of lightning talks. I was also in there. Instead of that, they can have their own talks separately.
Okay.
I will do the editing. That's okay.
I just saw Farah's message. Are those roles on site or remote? Oh, hybrid, distributed, I think is what I like to call it now. So yeah, I go in a few days a week, but it's not for everyone. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. People might mistake distributed means you have to go to a few different places.
This is true. Yeah.
Yeah.
Distributed thing.
Yeah. Hybrid is something people understand. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
Okay, I will talk to you later.
Yes, yeah. Bye.
Cheers, Prem. Bye.
Yes.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.